groaning under the weight of a feast. You can smell the roasted meats, the spices, the sweet, cloying scent of ripe fruit. You can see the condensation dripping down jugs of ice-cold sherbet. Every sense you have is screaming at you. Your throat feels like it's full of thorns because you are so thirsty. Your stomach is a knot of pain. And sitting right there, in the middle of this paradise, is your friend. He looks up. He smiles. He asks how you are. And you smile back. You say, "I'm fine." And then he lets you walk away, hungry.
It's a brutal image, isn't it? It's arguably one of the most painful kinds of silence in literature. That specific moment where a social contract is broken, but nobody says a word.
It really is. And today we are dissecting a very short, very sharp piece of writing that captures exactly that feeling. It's a short story, or perhaps more accurately, a piece of flash fiction titled Ek lamha jo bhulaye nahi bhoolta, which translates to A Moment That Cannot Be Forgotten. It is written by the Urdu writer Mustafa Sajjad Haider.
And when we say short, we mean short. This is a genre often called Afsabcha in Urdu literature, microfiction. It's designed to be a single punch to the gut. The story is simple. A narrator walks past a friend who is enjoying a lavish spread. The narrator is starving. They exchange pleasantries. The friend never offers the food. The narrator walks away. That's it. But within that tiny interaction, Haider manages to critique friendship, social class, hypocrisy, and the crushing weight of pride.
It's fascinating that you call it a punch to the gut, because that is exactly how it reads. It feels incredibly modern, yet it's rooted in this very specific cultural setting. So let's start with the setting itself. The text describes a dust.quan. For listeners who might not be familiar with that term, Alex, paint the picture for us. What does that word imply?
So, dast-i-kwan is a Persian and Urdu term that refers to the traditional dining spread. It's usually a cloth spread on the floor or a table where food is arranged. But culturally, it is so much more than just a table setting. In South Asian and Muslim cultures, the dast-i-kwan is a sacred space of hospitality. There is a concept known as mehman nawazi, or hospitality, which is deeply ingrained in the region's ethos. If you are eating and someone, anyone, let alone a friend, passes by, it is almost a reflex, a moral imperative to say, "Come, join me, Bismillah."
Right, it's not optional. It's not like in the UK where you might awkwardly wave at someone while eating a sandwich at your desk and hope they don't stop. It's a duty.
Precisely. Historically, the dast-i-kwan is an equalizer. You sit together, often on the floor, sharing from communal dishes. So when Haider sets the scene with this lavish description, he mentions fruits, beautiful dishes, appetizing aromas, colorful drinks. He is establishing a scene of abundance. But by having the friend not offer that abundance, he turns the dast-i-kwan from a symbol of connection into a symbol of exclusion. It becomes a border wall.
That's a powerful way to put it. A border wall made of food. Let's look at the sensory details the author uses. He writes about the narrator's physical state. My throat had thorns in it for thirst. That is such a visceral metaphor. It's not just, I was thirsty. It's pain.
It is physical agony. And notice the contrast. The narrator is in a state of acute deprivation. His throat has thorns. His stomach is empty. Meanwhile, the friend is surrounded by refreshing drinks that are described as thirst increasing in their appeal. The visual beauty of the food mocks the narrator's pain. This technique is classic realism. It reminds me of the works of the progressive writers movement in Urdu's literature, like Saadat Hasan Manto or Christian Chandra, who often juxtaposed extreme poverty with the callousness of the upper classes. Haider is tapping into that tradition here.
But here is the thing that really gets me, Alex. The friend isn't being outwardly mean. He doesn't tell the narrator to get lost. He smiles. The text says he had a magnificent smile and asked about the narrator's well-being. He asks, "How are you? Is this friend evil or is he just oblivious?"
That is the central tension of the story. If the friend had been rude, it would be a story about a bully. But because he is polite, it becomes a story about hypocrisy. This is what we call murawat in Urdu culture, or rather the hollow shell of it. Murawat is about consideration, politeness, saving face. The friend is performing the ritual of murawat by asking, "How are you?" But he is failing the spirit of it by ignoring the obvious physical reality of the person in front of him.
So the smile is a mask.
It's a weapon. The text says he asked while smiling continuously. That detail gives me chills. It suggests a kind of robotic detachment. He is so wrapped up in his own comfort that he cannot see the suffering right in front of him. Or, even worse, he sees it and chooses to ignore it because acknowledging the narrator's hunger would be awkward.
And that leads us to the narrator's reaction. He's starving. He's in pain. But when the friend asks how he is, he says, "I am fine." And he forces a smile onto his own face. Why? Why lie? If I were that hungry and my friend was sitting there with a banquet, I'd like to think I'd say, "Mate, can I have a glass of water?"
Would you, though? This brings us to the psychology of poverty and pride. There's immense shame associated with hunger, specifically with needing charity. If the narrator asks for food, he transforms the relationship. They are no longer friends, they become beggar and benefactor. By saying, "I am fine," the narrator is desperately clinging to his dignity. He is protecting his social standing at the cost of his physical well-being.
It's a performance. Both of them are performing. The friend is performing hospitality without the food, and the narrator is performing stability without the means.
Exactly. And the tragedy is that the friend accepts the performance. There's a crucial moment in the text, a pause, a silence. After the narrator says he's fine, there is a gap. In that gap, the friend has a choice. He could look closer. He could say, "You look pale. Sit down. Have a drink." That is what a true friend would do. That is what true adab or etiquette demands. Instead, the friend fills that silence with a dismissal.
He says, "Go. You must be getting late." That line is devastating. It's phrased as consideration. "Oh, I don't want to keep you." But it's actually an eviction notice. It's him saying, "I am releasing you from this interaction so I can go back to eating my kebabs in peace."
It's the ultimate brush-off. And notice the narrator's reaction to that dismissal. He nods in agreement. He colludes in his own rejection. He forces another smile and walks away. It highlights how difficult it is to break the script of social pleasantries even when they are killing you.
I want to zoom out a bit. We're talking about this short story by Mustafa Sajjad Haider, but does this dynamic remind you of anything broader? Because to me, this feels incredibly relevant to how we interact on social media today. We see people's curated lives, their feasts, so to speak, and we engage in these shallow interactions. Great pic, hope you're well, while real connection or real help is completely absent.
That is a brilliant parallel. It's the commodification of friendship. In the story, the friend has all the resources. He is the have. The narrator is the have-not. The friend offers a like, the smile, but refuses to share the resources. It reflects a society where we have become very good at the aesthetics of kindness, but very bad at the practice of care. In the context of Urdu literature, this theme is often explored through the lens of class disparity. You see it in the works of writers who critique the feudal or bourgeois classes who claim to love the poor but won't let them sit on their furniture.
And the title reinforces that, a moment that cannot be forgotten. Why can't he forget it? Is it the hunger, or is it the betrayal?
I think it's the betrayal, but specifically the betrayal of silence. Physical pain, like hunger, eventually fades. You eat eventually. But the memory of being looked in the eye by a friend who sees your pain and chooses to smile past it, That scars. It changes your worldview. You realize that you are alone. That is what makes it unforgettable. It's the moment the narrator realized his friend wasn't really a friend.
There's also an interesting ambiguity about the friend's intent. I want to play devil's advocate for a second longer. Is it possible the friend genuinely thought the narrator was busy? Go, you must be getting late. Maybe he thought he was being polite by not delaying him.
It is possible, technically, but I would argue the text doesn't support that interpretation because of the sensory overload. The narrator describes the scene with such intensity. The smells, the sights. In a real-life proximity like that, hunger is visible. Thirst is visible, dry lips, a parched voice. If the friend missed all those cues, his ignorance is a form of negligence. In South Asian culture, the rule of thumb is you offer food to even a stranger who isn't hungry. You offer water to the postman. To not offer food to a friend standing at your table, that requires an active decision to withhold or a level of self-absorption that borders on narcissism.
So the negligence is the crime.
Yes. It's the crime of indifference, and indifference is often more hurtful than malice.
Let's look at the structure of the story again. It's circular. It starts with the narrator arriving and ends with him leaving. Nothing changes in the physical world. He arrives hungry, he leaves hungry. But internally, everything has shifted. It's a classic epiphany story, but a negative one, an anti-epiphany.
Spot on. And the pacing reflects that. The story moves slowly when describing the food. The narrator lingers on the details because he is obsessed with them. Then the dialogue is choppy and stilted. How are you? I'm fine. Going somewhere? Yes. It mimics the awkwardness of the encounter. And then the ending is abrupt. I walked ahead. It's a dismissal for the reader too. We are left standing there, watching him walk away, feeling the injustice of it.
It brings up the question of what we owe each other. In a world where we are increasingly individualistic, do we still have that duty of the dastakhwan? If I have a sandwich and you don't, do I have to offer you half?
Ethically, most moral frameworks would say yes, or at least you should offer. But culturally, in the context of this story, the answer is an emphatic, non-negotiable yes. The friend's failure to do so is a failure of humanity. It suggests a breakdown in the social fabric. If we can't even feed our friends, what hope is there for society?
It's really a story about the violence of manners. We use manners to smooth things over, but here manners are used to keep someone starving. The friend uses "you must be late" as a polite way to hoard his resources.
That is a fantastic phrase, the violence of manners. It perfectly encapsulates the story. The smile is violent, the polite dismissal is violent, and the narrator's own politeness, his refusal to scream "I am hungry," is a form of violence he inflicts on himself.
I wonder about the author, Mustafa Sajjad Haider. Writing something this short requires a lot of restraint. You have to resist the urge to explain. He doesn't tell us why the narrator is poor or why the friend is rich. He doesn't give us a backstory. Why do you think he's stripped it back so much?
Because the backstory doesn't matter. Hunger is the immediate reality. By removing the context of why they are in these positions, Haider forces us to focus on the interaction itself. If we knew the narrator was, say, a gambler who lost all his money, we might judge him. If we knew the friend had worked hard for that meal, we might sympathize with him. By removing those details, we are left with just the raw human equation. One person has need, the other has excess, and the bridge between them is burned.
It universalizes it. We have all been the narrator in some way. Maybe not with food, but with time or attention or affection, standing on the outside looking in.
And, hopefully, we are self-aware enough to worry that we have been the friend. That is the haunting part. How many times have I smiled at someone and missed their pain because I was too busy enjoying my own feast? That is the question the story leaves you with.
That is the thorn in the throat for the reader. We walk away feeling a little bit guilty.
And that is the power of good literature, even or especially when it is this short. It disrupts your comfort.
It makes the familiar strange. You will never look at a dinner invitation, or a lack of one, the same way again.
It's a reminder to look past the "I'm fine," because usually when people say that with a forced smile, they are anything but.
Absolutely. The smile is often the heaviest thing a person carries.
Well, on that slightly somber but very necessary note, we are going to wrap up this analysis of Mustafa Sajjad Haider's A Moment That Cannot Be Forgotten. It's a tiny story with a massive shadow.
It certainly is. A masterclass in brevity.
If this conversation made you think of a moment where you saw or missed what wasn't being said, send this episode to a friend. You never know what conversation it might start.